The Germans have a word for our first story. I think they pronounce it Schadenfreude. It's when somebody takes, well, let's just say it. I think you take kind of joy in the discomfort of others. You take some kind of pleasure in the discomfort of others. It's usually out of a sense of irony, right? That there's something happened to that person that somehow maybe they even deserved it. And you're happy at the little bit of justice that was delivered upon them. Well, that's not really the greatest word for this, but hear me out. So here's a story out of Yale University. A bunch of black people see some people in and around Yale, and they beat the hell out of them, and they get caught. That's kind of the unusual part. But Yale, of course, is a center for social justice warriors, their law school, their medical school. I mean, Yale, huge institution in Connecticut. But the students in and around the campus are targets for the predators who live off campus in New Haven. And we've done a lot of stories on that, whether it's visiting Chinese doctors, getting their ears sliced off, just students walking around that are just sheep being led into the wolves' den. Lots of stories on that, and don't make the black kids angry. So here's our latest story, and okay, so this happened at Yale, but during the Black Lives Matter movement, there's a lot of activity at Yale. Lots of students on the campus, raising a big ruckus about black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially why cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. I mean, this is what they learn, not in their campus, in their school. Could we take a minute to talk about what happens to a black student at a college like Yale? Okay, we know that to get into a Yale, we know that an Asian student is essentially penalized 250 points when it comes to a white student, and the number is even bigger when it comes to you're penalized on your SATs, and that number is even bigger when it comes to a black student. We've documented that many times, and that's, sorry to keep pumping the book, but that's where it is. Don't make the black kids angry. Anyway, so if you're a black student and you're one of these guys that gets in on the cusp, you're one of these guys that has a marginal academic record, like say, how about Michelle Obama? She went to Princeton. So you go into Yale, and what are your choices? You're going to study physics? You're going to study English? You're going to study, you can get into these schools, but the question is, there's no place to hide in some of these classrooms. If you're studying English and math, you're handing the test in. Nobody knows if you're black or white. They're just going to grade the dang test. So for a lot of black students that go to Ivy League schools and some of these academically elite schools, you really only have two choices. One, flunk out, or two, study black studies. Because, and then you could spend 4 years studying racial resentment. And where the answer to every question is the same, no matter what the question. The answer is white racism. And so that's the kind of place that Yale has created. And so whenever I see a crime like this at Yale, I don't want to hear from the cop reporter just going through the motions, talking to the chief of police, going, "Oh, we're not going to take this anymore." No, I want to hear from the people teaching those black students all about racial resentment and giving them their 4-year degree in racial resentment, whether it's undergrad or in grad or in the law school. We never hear from them. We only hear from them when they're doing the protest thing. But when we experience some crime wildly out of proportion at Yale, nobody wants to say nothing. As long as we're up at Yale, let's stay up there, because here's another story out of Connecticut. And, every once in a while, like last week, and I think I did jump the gun a little bit, there was a story out of Philadelphia, a bunch of black people. The story said a bunch of black people were just fighting other black people with snowballs. Then, the little angels descended down the subway, and they had a little bit of an argy-bargy down there. And, to their credit, the chief of police of the transit union, Transit SEPTA, the transit group, they said, yeah, this happens every day now. Okay, I thought, hey, it's a step forward. But then later on, I saw the real video, and the real video wasn't black people fighting black people. It was a large group of black people harassing, threatening, stalking, and finally beating the hell out of a small group of white kids. The video made that so clear. We did a video on that. I'll put a link to it. So every once in a while, I do see people starting to acknowledge, be more willing to, usually by the time it's when they acknowledge it, right, it's usually kind of way too late. Like in Philly, they're going, yeah, this happened around here a lot. Well, Philly's been a dark and dangerous and dirty, hot chocolate mess for a long time. And so maybe they're starting to acknowledge it, however, obliquely. But every time I think we take one step back, we take about 3 steps. One step forward, we take 3 or 4 steps back. Thinking of this article here from Connecticut, there's a bus service they call the Fast Track, and they're talking about whether a couple of kids are fighting, and they only arrested 2 of them. So if you just read the article like everybody reads the newspaper, you go blah blah blah. There were 2 kids fighting on the bus, and well, that's not really good, is it? No. But then if you talk to people from Connecticut, talk to people close to what happens up there, and you read the article with a microscope, the very last sentence, you'll see something like, well, we think there might have been more than 2 kids there. So here's the real story, and here's the real story. Okay, so let's watch this video, then I'll tell you what the real story was.
Oh, now I can go on Snapchat finally.
Using the Fast Track's free Wi-Fi as he travels from Newington to Hartford. But his convenient ride through Connecticut changed.
I think it's ridiculous.
Once he caught word of an attack that happened on the same bus he uses several times a week.
That's stuff that I wouldn't expect and I want to see every day on this Fast Track.
According to state police, several juveniles attacked passengers on this Fast Track bus, stealing a cell phone in the process. With the help of Newington and New Britain police officers, 2 of the suspects were caught around the Cedar Station stop. The incident now has passengers rethinking the way they travel.
It's when you least expect it, something happens, so I guess you gotta watch out,
Keep your stuff in your pockets, keep it close to you, and watch out for people that you don't know.
Eduardo Rivera says he's used to seeing incidents on the Fast Track, recalling fights and several verbal arguments.
Some threatened the bus driver, then they open the door and out he goes running.
But De Jesus says he won't stop riding the Fast Track, even if he has to keep an extra eye on his things.
We all seem like a pretty nice, small little community that goes up and down. It's usually the same people.
So the real story is a large group of black people were on that bus. They weren't fighting anybody. They were attacking the passengers and stealing from them. And this goes on all the time and often includes the bus driver, whom they also attack. That's the story that newspaper just cannot summon up enough intestinal fortitude to tell us for reasons of their own. I really don't, if they're not really giving us now I'm being polite, right? If they're not giving us the full story. That's a polite way of saying, if they continue to lie their asses off about black mob violence on these buses, well, I don't really care why. I just care that they do. And it keeps happening over and over and over. They're just so eager to protect the black criminal class in this country. And by the way, I don't care if you're a guy that's been in prison, or if you're a person that's enabling them, or if you're a person that's writing about them, or if you're a reporter or a public official in denial, deceit, and delusion about them, that's all one group to me. You are all one class of people who are responsible for this black criminality that is so wildly out of proportion. I really don't make any distinction between the guy who goes and conks somebody on the head and the reporter who pretends something else really happened there, or who refuses to connect the dots in their town. Or when Black Lives Matter has a rally saying, yeah, all white people suck because they're always attacking black people, the reporter doesn't say, hey, in our town it's the other way around. Is that the way it is in other towns? I don't even know. Okay, let's leave Connecticut. Let's go down to Richmond. This story is I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's the same story here. If you live in Richmond, you actually know what the story is about. Because a lot of times they'll say, well, this happened here, this happened there. Anyway, let's take a look at this story. And it's a nasty bit of business. It's a bunch of black people attacking a kid with autism.
And Bill, those Crime Insider sources tell me this is not the first time police have been called to that South Side area for beatdowns. This time, the Saturday attack caught on camera, the victim hoping viewers will recognize what he calls kids, vicious a gang of kids that are up to no good.
Colin.
Blindsided.
Bunch of kids just jumped him.
And beaten. We are hiding the identity of a young man with autism, thrown to the ground, kicked, stomped, and hit repeatedly in the face. He has a black eye and broken nose, but knows it could have been worse. The woman he was walking with was also attacked.
They slammed me to the ground, beat the crap out of me. My eye's black. I'm missing a tooth. And when I got up, I was dizzy, and I was dripping blood.
The victims say they were walking home from a store on Jeff Davis. They got about halfway down Yorktown Road when they noticed a lot of kids hanging out at the corner of Yorktown and Berwyn Street. So they took a different route. They walked through a cut, turned left onto Berwyn. They said that's when they heard the sound of feet running towards them. And the next thing they knew, they were on the ground. Police were called and are investigating.
This needs to stop around here.
Crime Insider sources say this is the first time it's caught on camera, but believe beatings like this have happened before and recently.
Winos, prostitutes, anybody that's walking to the 7-Eleven, they jumping on them.
The victim tells CBS 6 his attackers were teens, girls and boys, all wearing hoodies and similar clothing. And what baffles him most, he says, he was minding his own business.
They were just saying, bam, bam, bam.
Neighbors believe the kids, Bill, are coming from the Ruffin Mill area on the city's south side. Parents, if you are watching and recognize these children, police want to hear from you.
You know, just by looking at the video, it's kind of hard to identify these perps by race. And that's why it happened 3 days ago, and I haven't done a story on it yet, because it took me 3 days to figure out what was going on down there, to talk to people in Richmond and to figure out where everybody lives and what the reporter was really saying. So the reporter was saying something, well, they come from, what do you call it, Ruffin Hill or Ruffin Mill or something like that. And they come from South Richmond. Well, these are all code words for the black neighborhood of Richmond. I mean, Richmond's also a nice little, nasty little piece of work down there, especially in downtown around Virginia Commonwealth University. Had a guy leave a comment this morning going, hell, man, you think that's bad? You ought to see what goes on around VCU. I said, hey, man, I documented the hell out of that on my book with lots of videos. We do it here. So some people come on new. They think they come onto the channel new. They think everything they know is new. Well, it's not. Nobody, in Richmond, there's some really dark and dangerous places in Richmond that the local news just will not tell us about. I remember last year, I can't place this video, but I saw a bunch of people, just like the guys we just saw in this video, all had hoods on, and it was all gray, and it was all at night, and the light was kind of glaring, and it washed everything out, right? You couldn't tell who was who. You could not identify these guys by race by looking at the video. But then they switched the video to inside this liquor store. They beat the hell out of this white guy. I think he was a handicapped guy too, in the parking lot. And then next thing you know, they switched to everybody went inside the liquor store with the $20 they stole off this guy. But the camera inside the liquor store was high definition color. It was like, boom! All of a sudden, it was like we were watching, a reunion of the cast of Roots or something. I mean, absolutely no question about what was going on there. And that's what made this story out of Richmond weird. That it was the video didn't. I mean, I don't even know why. Why do people put these cameras up if they don't do you any good? Camera in this case kind of obscured what was going on. It obscured this evidence of large-scale black criminality, which, by the way, happens a lot in Richmond. But we document a lot. People in Richmond don't want any part of it. Not the reporters, not the public officials, not the activists. They just don't want to make the black kids angry.